Hello dear friends, you're watching Ruslan Belov channel, and this is the daily frontline report from Ukraine. So the main news of the past day, or rather the evening, was of course the conversation between Putin and Trump. A long one, lasting 2.5 hours. They agreed to meet soon, most likely in Hungary. The delivery of Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine is temporarily suspended. Everyone who was rubbing their hands, expecting that dozens or even hundreds of missiles would soon fly toward Moscow. Nothing like that will happen anytime soon. They'll meet and talk. Well, we'll see what they agree on. Will there be a freeze of the conflict? That's the main question. Write your opinion in the comments. Meanwhile, the fighting continues, and we continue to study the situation at the front. So friends, while there was a flood of political news and a lot of emotions among people, very different emotions, there was also plenty of movement and developments on the battlefield. Without delay, let's break down what's been happening. We'll start today from the south of the Zaporizhzhia region. Here, for the first time in a long while, the Russian army has made noticeable progress. The troops managed to advance along the E105 highway for about 700 meters, simultaneously expanding control over the nearby Darka areas. This zone, all these small buildings, is not part of the village of Primorsk, as some mistakenly think. It's a dacha cooperative located between Primorsk and Stepnohirsk. Russian forces have expanded their control zone here, and most of these dacha plots are now under Russian control, but the fighting here is very, very intense. That's why any progress happens rarely and comes at an enormous cost. As for the prospects, of course, the remaining Dacha territory still needs to be cleared. But as for bypassing Stepnohirsk from this road and entering it from the north, that's unlikely. The terrain here is tricky. It might look like Russian positions are on higher ground and the settlement lies open below, but there's nowhere to hide artillery, no good spots for fire positions. The same can't be said about Stepnohirsk itself, where Ukrainian positions are well fortified. Infantry groups simply can't slip through here. How would they go down the ravine? They'd be wiped out before even reaching the bottom. So the goal of this advance is to clear the Dacha zone and keep pressing toward Primorsk, not Stepnohirsk. If Stepnohirsk is to be bypassed, it must be done from the east, not the west. But so far there's silence on that front. I can't say I'm surprised. Even in my earlier video about the prospects of the autumn campaign, I mentioned that this section is extremely difficult. Taking Stepnohirsk alone by the end of the autumn campaign would already be an achievement, though even that seems unlikely, and that's exactly what we're seeing now. Very slow and difficult progress. A completely different situation is unfolding in another part of the Zaporizhzhia region, in the zone of responsibility of the Vostok East Group. There, fierce and heavy fighting continues for the last defensive line built along the Yanchur River. It must be said, this line has indeed slowed down the Russian advance. But that's what defensive lines are for, especially when they're built along a river. The river itself is already an obstacle, and the defenses on top of it make it doubly strong. Nevertheless, the Russian army continues to move forward little by little. Over the past day, the troops advanced closer to the river and along its banks near the approaches to the village of Okhotniche. That's what cartographers are noting. But according to my own sources on the ground, Okhotniche is already, in practice, under Russian control, and relevant footage confirming this should appear soon. Still, all of these advances are on the far side of the river. The key now is to cross it, and that's where the difficulties remain. On this entire defensive line, there are two key settlements, Uspenivka and Poltavka. If they fall, the entire line of defense will collapse. Moving to the Dnipropetrovsk region, in the Pokrovsk sector, no changes yet. But there has been progress on the Novopavlivka axis, quite a significant one, over 2 kilometers. Now it's just a matter of straightening the front line by clearing out the pocket near the Dacha area. That said, I'd caution against expecting a storming of Novopavlivka anytime soon, probably not even this year. The village is huge, larger than some towns, and it's divided by a river, which makes the assault even harder. Capturing Novopavlivka, especially in this manner, would require very substantial forces. Such an operation will only become realistic once the Russian army takes Ivanivka, and advances from there toward Fedorivske and then toward the main road. In parallel, troops from the direction of Novopodhorodne could move toward Chuhuiv. Only then would an assault on Novopavlivka make sense. And that's clearly not a prospect for this year. So for now, the current advances are more about gradually closing in on the settlement and putting pressure on the Ukrainian garrison. Nothing more. Moving on, in Pokrovsk, Mirnohrad and Rodinske, no news so far, but there is some from the Dobropilya salient, and it's in Russia's favor. The troops managed to advance 1 kilometer from the southern outskirts of Ivanivka and reach the northern outskirts of Dorozhny, also entering the Mertsalov mine area. That's where heavy fighting is now taking place. What does this tell us? That the Ukrainian forces and Azov units here are clearly struggling. They're being pushed back regularly now. Just 3 weeks ago, they were the ones pressing, but now the Russian army has regained most of the lost positions and is pushing them back instead. Why is taking Mertsalov and Dorozhny important? First, it opens the possibility of putting serious pressure on the city of Beletsk. Second, it allows Russian forces to clear everything south of that line, securing the entire Dobropilya salient from counterattacks or attempts to cut it off. In fact, those attempts seem to have stopped altogether. Clearly, the Azov fighters failed to achieve anything in that regard. Let's keep watching. There are also updates from the Kostiantynivka front. Cartographers have drawn an advance from Predtekin toward Kostiantynivka, but in reality the movement is far greater, much deeper and more significant. The fighting is already happening closer to the city itself, so I think we should wait until tomorrow. Cartographers will likely update the maps properly, and then we can analyze whether the real assault on Kostiantynivka has begun and what prospects that opens. So let's leave this section aside for now. Now to some very good progress on the Lyman sector. Here, Russian forces advanced across a front about 5 kilometers wide, even slightly more, and most importantly, cleared the forest area north of Yampil. If you've watched my earlier videos, you'll remember I said those forests are the key to Yampil. Without control over them, full control of the settlement is impossible. Now part of that task has been completed. The northern forest area is under Russian control. That means the northern and eastern parts of Yampil, already under Russian control, are now secure from counterattacks, at least from the north. The next objective is to take the remaining forest belt, and then most of Yampil will fall. Overall, as you can see, forest areas are now being taken by the Russian army relatively easily. Previously, for years, the front was stagnant in such terrain. Remember the Kremina forest, but now Russian forces are clearing one after another. In the Siversk sector, there haven't been confirmed updates yet. Or, to be more precise, no footage confirmed by objective control. According to unverified reports, Russian forces have entered and begun storming the village of Dronivka. Whether that's true or not, we'll find out in the coming days. Summing up the past 24 hours, over 15 square kilometers of territory have come under Russian control. A solid pace for the autumn campaign. Now let's turn to what's happening on the political stage. A phone conversation took place between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. The details were clarified by Yuri Ushakov, the Russian presidential aide. The discussion lasted nearly 2.5 hours, was highly substantive, and conducted in a frank and confidential manner. The main focus was on the Ukrainian crisis. Putin presented his assessment of the situation and reaffirmed Russia's interest in a peaceful, political, and diplomatic resolution. Vladimir Putin emphasized that Russia currently holds the strategic initiative. Trump, in turn, repeatedly insisted on achieving peace as soon as possible, noting that ending the conflict would open enormous opportunities for cooperation. The two also discussed potential deliveries of Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. Putin warned that such deliveries would not change the course of hostilities, but would seriously damage Russian-American relations. Both sides agreed to prepare a new meeting, with Budapest being considered as a possible location. The contact was described as highly useful, and the leaders agreed to maintain communication, according to Yuri Ushakov. The Telegram channel Legitimny added further details to the story. According to its information, Trump will not provide Tomahawks to Zelensky for now, but will promise to do so later if peace is not achieved. A new round of negotiations is beginning. According to the channel's sources, there may be another temporary ceasefire affecting energy and infrastructure, a topic discussed by both presidents. The same source also claims that Trump wants to organize a three-way meeting with Putin and Zelensky before the new year. In general, the channel summarizes, the war will continue for now. Trump also declared that India allegedly would no longer purchase oil from Russia. Today, Modi assured me of that. Now we must make China stop buying, the US president stated. My friend, Indian Prime Minister Modi, assured me that India will not purchase Russian oil. It's still happening now, but it will end soon, Trump added. Back in September, media outlets reported that the United States and India were nearing a trade agreement, though Washington was demanding that New Delhi abandon Russian oil. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian armed forces are reportedly preparing for a large-scale offensive. I'll deal with that, Trump said. The US president stated that he intends to speak with Zelensky about the war and the planned offensive. We'll talk to him about the war, and we'll talk about what, as I understand, they want to start an offensive. I'll make a decision about that, but they want to go on the offensive, you know that. And we'll have to decide, he said. All our sources in the Ukrainian General Staff and at the front say that without mobilizing young people, such campaigns are impossible. Rumors that the Ukrainian government might cancel the exemption for youth under 22 years old are likely to become reality as early as November, reports the Telegram channel Resident. China, meanwhile, has threatened the United States with retaliation over Washington's warning that tariffs may be imposed for purchasing Russian oil. The actions of the United States are a typical example of unilateral intimidation and economic coercion. They seriously undermine international trade and economic rules and threaten the security and stability of global production and supply chains, said Lin Jian, an official spokesperson for China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He described China's right to trade with Russia and other nations as legitimate and lawful. If China's lawful rights and interests are harmed, the Chinese side will definitely take firm countermeasures to resolutely defend its sovereignty, security, and development interests, Lin Jian declared. Poland, for its part, has demanded that Germany stop investigating the Nord Stream sabotage, arguing that the inquiry does not serve Polish or NATO interests. There may have been another participant involved in the attack. Poland is interested in protecting all those who could have participated in causing damage to Nord Stream 2, said representatives of Polish intelligence. Poland has a direct interest in the pipeline's disappearance, as it is building a hub for US gas imports. Financial Times adds that the Polish judicial system recently extended the pre-trial detention of a Ukrainian suspect being held in Poland, while another suspect detained in Italy continues to resist extradition to Germany. Trump again stated that Modi had promised to stop buying Russian oil. The US president said the Indian Prime Minister pledged to end the purchases, calling it a serious step forward and adding that he now intends to persuade China to do the same. This statement came amid Washington's ongoing economic pressure. Earlier, the United States imposed 25% tariffs on Indian goods, allegedly due to India's purchase of Russian raw materials. India, however, has repeatedly stated that it will not abandon Russian energy resources, prioritizing its own economic interests. Moscow, in turn, has warned that such a refusal could cost New Delhi between $9 and $10 billion in losses. The situation has already been commented on by India's Ministry of External Affairs. Randhir Jaiswal said the country's top priority is to protect the interests of Indian consumers amid an unstable global energy environment. The focus, he said, is on stable prices, reliable supplies, expanding energy sources, and diversification. At the same time, New Delhi is ready to increase purchases of US energy resources, and discussions on this issue are continuing. However, in India itself, officials said they know nothing about any conversation between Modi and Trump. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Randhir Jaiswal stated he was unaware of any talk between Narendra Modi and the US president on Wednesday. Nothing unusual about that. The American leader often hears and says what he wants to believe. How close that is to reality is another question entirely. Apparently, India will stop buying Russian oil around the same time the BRICS alliance collapses. That's all for today, friends. Thank you for watching and staying with Ruslan Belov channel. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think about the Trump-Putin talks and the future of this conflict? Subscribe if you haven't already, and stay tuned. Tomorrow we'll continue to track every key update from the front and the political arena. Take care and see you in the next report.